You're standing in line at a coffee shop. A woman, maybe 25 years younger than you, glances at you while she waits for her order. It's brief, a flicker of eye contact. Nothing dramatic, but you noticed it. And immediately, a voice in your head dismisses it. She wasn't looking at you. Not like that. She was probably just scanning the room. Or maybe she thought she recognized you from somewhere. Because the alternative, that a woman that age could genuinely find you attractive, feels too unlikely, too socially implausible, too far outside what you've been told is acceptable or even possible. So you look away. You tell yourself it didn't mean anything, and the moment passes. But here's what most men don't understand. Attraction does not begin where social opinion begins. It begins in the body, in the nervous system, in the quiet, unconscious assessment that happens before language, before judgment, before anyone has decided what's appropriate or what makes sense. And sometimes, often, in fact, that assessment leads a younger woman toward an older man. Not because she's confused, not because she has unresolved issues, not because she's chasing resources or security in some calculated way, but because attraction operates on layers far deeper than age, appearance, or social expectation. Today, we're going to examine why this happens, not to justify it, not to defend it, but to understand it. Because the dynamics at play here are rooted in psychology, physiology, and emotional architecture that most people never discuss. Let's begin. There's a pervasive social narrative around large age gaps in relationships. It's almost always framed negatively. The assumption is that if a younger woman is attracted to a significantly older man, something must be wrong. She must be damaged. He must be predatory. The relationship must be transactional or dysfunctional. And while unhealthy dynamics certainly exist, that framework misses something fundamental. Attraction is often physiological before it is social. The human nervous system doesn't calculate age differences. It doesn't cross-reference societal norms or run a compatibility algorithm based on birth years. It responds to presence, to energy, to regulation, to the signals another person's body and behavior send out. And those signals, calm versus chaotic, grounded versus scattered, steady versus reactive, often correlate more with emotional maturity than with chronological age. A younger woman's nervous system doesn't ask, "How old is he?" It asks, "Does he feel safe? Does his presence create expansion or contraction? Does being near him feel stabilizing or destabilizing?" Those questions are answered not through conscious evaluation, but through unconscious somatic response. And sometimes, the answer leads her toward a man decades older. Not because the number itself is attractive, but because what that number often represents, years of emotional development, self-possession, groundedness, creates a physiological response that youth, in and of itself, does not. This isn't about logic. It's not a decision made on a spreadsheet. It's an attraction rooted in the way her body responds to his presence. And presence, as we'll explore, is built over time. If this resonates, subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma. We explore the psychology behind attraction with depth, not noise. The first psychological layer that draws younger women to older men is emotional regulation. Most younger men, particularly those in their 20s and early 30s, are still learning how to regulate their emotional states. They're skilled at performing confidence, at projecting competence, at appearing calm. But beneath that performance, there's often volatility, reactivity, an underlying current of insecurity that surfaces when things don't go as planned. This isn't a moral failing. It's a developmental reality. Emotional regulation is a skill that develops over time, through experience, through failure, through the slow process of learning that your worth is not contingent on external validation. But for a woman, especially one who is emotionally attuned, that lack of regulation is palpable. She feels it in how quickly his mood shifts, in how he reacts when challenged, in how much energy he requires from her to stay stable. Older men who have done the internal work, who have moved through enough of life to no longer be destabilized by minor setbacks, carry themselves differently. They don't perform calm. They are calm. Not because nothing bothers them, but because they've learned to process tension internally rather than externalizing it onto the people around them. Let me give you a concrete example. A younger man and an older man are both at dinner with a woman. The waiter makes a mistake with the order. The younger man's jaw tightens. He snaps at the waiter. His energy becomes sharp. The woman sitting across from him feels the shift. Her nervous system registers, reactive, unstable, unsafe. The older man, in the same situation, pauses. He addresses the issue calmly. His tone doesn't change. His body doesn't tense. The woman sitting across from him feels nothing shift. Her nervous system registers, grounded, regulated, safe. That difference, subtle as it may seem, is everything. Because women are not consciously evaluating these moments. Their bodies are. And their bodies respond to the man who doesn't require them to manage his emotional state. This is what younger women often describe when they talk about feeling at ease with an older man. It's not about him being nicer or more accommodating. It's about him being regulated. And regulation, at a nervous system level, feels like safety, and safety is the foundation of sustained attraction. The second layer is what I call masculine gravity. Gravity is not dominance, it's not control, it's not loud assertion or physical intensity. Gravity is the quality that makes someone noticeable without them trying to be noticed. It's the sense that a person occupies space with quiet authority, simply because they're comfortable being exactly where they are. Younger men often move through the world with competitive energy. They're trying to establish themselves, prove themselves, compete for attention, for status, for validation. And that energy, while it can be exciting in short bursts, is ultimately exhausting to be around long term, because competition requires constant output, constant performance, constant positioning. And when you're with someone who's constantly performing, you never get to relax. You're always aware that they're managing how they're perceived, and that awareness creates distance, not closeness. Older men who have already established themselves, who no longer need to prove anything to anyone, carry a different energy. They move more slowly. They speak more deliberately. They don't need to fill every silence or dominate every conversation. They're simply present. And presence, unhurried and unforced, creates gravity. Think about how this shows up in real interactions. A younger man walks into a room and immediately scans it. Who's here? Who noticed him? What does he need to do to make an impression? His energy is outward, seeking, performing. An older man walks into the same room and doesn't scan. He simply moves to where he's going. He's aware of his surroundings, but he's not performing for them. His energy is inward, contained, self-possessed. The younger woman in that room doesn't consciously think, that man has gravity, but she feels the difference. One man is pulling energy toward himself through effort. The other is creating a natural pull through stillness. And stillness, true, grounded stillness, is magnetic in a way that effort never is. This is why younger women often describe feeling drawn to older men without being able to articulate exactly why. It's not about what he's doing. It's about what he's not doing. He's not chasing. He's not performing. He's not managing her perception of him. He's just there, solid, unhurried, grounded. And that groundedness creates a polarity that allows her to soften. Because when she's with someone who isn't competing for anything, she doesn't have to either. She can relax into her own presence. And that relaxation, that permission to simply be, is one of the deepest forms of attraction. The third and deepest layer is attachment psychology. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth, explores how early relational experiences shape the way we bond as adults. And one of the core concepts is the difference between secure and anxious attachment styles. Secure attachment is characterized by emotional steadiness, trust, and the ability to remain connected even during conflict. Anxious attachment, by contrast, is marked by fear of abandonment, emotional volatility, and difficulty regulating distress. Most younger men, simply by virtue of where they are developmentally, exhibit more anxious attachment behaviors. They need reassurance. They monitor the relationship constantly. They become destabilized when things feel uncertain. And while this isn't inherently problematic, it does place an emotional burden on the woman they're with, because anxious energy demands constant management. Older men, particularly those who have done relational work, are more likely to embody secure attachment. They're comfortable with emotional intimacy. They don't fear conflict because they've learned it doesn't mean the relationship is ending. They can hold tension without needing to resolve it immediately. And they don't need constant reassurance that they're valued. This difference shows up most clearly in moments of disagreement. A younger man and a younger woman have a conflict. He becomes defensive. He withdraws. He needs her to reassure him that everything is okay before he can re-engage. His anxiety makes the conflict about his emotional state rather than the issue at hand. An older man and a younger woman have the same conflict. He remains present. He doesn't shut down. He doesn't need her to make him feel better. He can sit with the discomfort, address the issue calmly, and trust that the relationship is strong enough to withstand tension. That ability to remain emotionally available even during difficulty is what secure attachment looks like. And it's profoundly stabilizing for a woman, because it tells her that she doesn't have to manage his emotions in order to maintain connection. This is what younger women often mean when they say an older man makes them feel safe. It's not physical safety, it's emotional safety. The safety of knowing that his sense of self isn't contingent on her constant validation, that he can hold space for her emotions without needing her to hold space for his first. And that kind of safety, deep, relational, nervous system level safety, is one of the most attractive qualities a man can offer. Now, it would be intellectually dishonest not to address the most common critique of age gap relationships, the assumption that they're purely transactional, that younger women are only attracted to older men because of financial resources or material stability. And yes, resources can matter. Stability can matter. The ability to provide a secure foundation can absolutely play a role in attraction. But to reduce the entire dynamic to economics is to fundamentally misunderstand how long-term attraction actually works. Because if it were purely about money, these relationships would collapse the moment financial circumstances changed. But they don't. Many of these relationships are among the most emotionally resilient, precisely because they're built on something deeper than material exchange. What's often mistaken for resource seeking is actually structure seeking. Younger women aren't necessarily looking for wealth. They're looking for emotional architecture, for a man who has built a life with intention, who knows what he values and why, who doesn't need her to provide meaning or direction. That structure, internal, not external, is what creates the sense of stability. And stability, in this context, is not about bank accounts. It's about knowing who you are and being unbothered by external chaos. A man can have modest financial means and still provide this kind of stability if he's grounded in his own identity. Conversely, a man can be wealthy and still feel unstable if he's anxious, reactive, or constantly seeking validation. So while resources can enhance a relationship, they're not the foundation of attraction. The foundation is presence, regulation, gravity. And those qualities are built through time, experience, and internal development, not through net worth. Let me bring this back to where we started. You're standing in line at a coffee shop. A younger woman glances at you, and instead of dismissing it, you allow yourself to consider, maybe attraction doesn't operate the way I've been told it does. Maybe it's not about age. Maybe it's about presence. Maybe the qualities you've developed over decades, the emotional regulation, the groundedness, the quiet self-possession, are exactly what create the kind of magnetic pull that youth, in and of itself, cannot. This isn't about ego. It's not about superiority. It's simply recognizing that attraction evolves. What draws people together at 20 is not the same as what draws them together at 40 or 50. And for many younger women, what becomes attractive later in life is depth, stability, the sense that a man is fully formed rather than still becoming. You don't need to apologize for that. You don't need to justify it. You simply need to recognize it. Because the narrative that says attraction fades with age is incomplete. Attraction doesn't fade. It shifts. And what it shifts toward for women who have matured beyond surface-level desires is exactly what you've spent decades cultivating. So stop doubting it. Stop dismissing the glances. Stop assuming it's impossible. Because it was never the number. It was the gravity. And gravity doesn't diminish with age. It deepens. Do you believe attraction changes as we get older, or does it stay the same? Comment below. I'd genuinely like to hear your perspective. And if you value psychological depth in these conversations, subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma. I'll see you in the next one.